Welcome everyone, it's Neil here from 3D Tutor, back today with a different kind of video. And this one is based around a full commentary of how I actually created this Greek stylized church. So if you want to find out about all the tips and tricks I used to create this, then be sure to watch it through to the end. If you want to learn everything I do in this video, then check out the links down below, which will give you access to around 200 hours worth of content. It'll also give you access to a growing community who want a fast way to learn how to build things like what we'll be going through today. So this is the whole modeling process of a stylized Greek church. Please tap that like button and subscribe if you like this sort of video. And with all that said, let's get started with my Greek stylized church. So here we are, we're starting off with the references. As I say in all of my courses, it's extremely important that you grab tons and tons of references. So you can see in the first instance, I'm actually getting the main images for the church. I'm not actually just focusing on, primarily actually Greek church. I'm getting an actual lot of architecture and things like that, just to get a lot of ideas of actually what I actually want to create. You can see here as well, those actual churches are some that I took in the car on the way here in Cyprus on the way to Lemessos. So once I've got all those, I'll actually move on then to the next lot, which will be, let's have a look, 3D model realism. So what I'm looking for here is getting references to what actually a realistic 3D model is going to look like. I don't bother actually getting a lot of those. It's because I actually want to get away from the realism. So I want more stylization. You can see here I'm getting a lot of images as well for the roof, because I think the roof is one of the most important parts of the actual build. So I come up with a simple design based on those actual images. I also use those as well to design, like you can see on there's a circle where the actual tiles go around. The themes, basically I'm looking there for the lighting, how I want it to be lit. And then of course we move on to the parts and what makes this a Greek church different from like a normal cathedral or something like that. Because in the end, that's what we're actually wanting to do. You can see there I've also got a bell on there, just so I have an idea of what actually bells look like in churches, because they are very different. Now you can see I'm actually moving on to the stained glass. And I do know I want some stained glass in there. I didn't know how I actually wanted it to, how stylized I wanted it to be or anything like that. And in the end, actually, I went quite simple. Now, what I always do is I grab stylized images, and the reason I grab stylized images is because there's a huge difference to something that's a little bit stylized to something that's heavily stylized, like this image you just saw there. So I get all of these images then to say, right, this is how far I want to go with the stylization. Finally, I'm just grabbing some more church images. They're probably the most important references to actually have. So now with all my images, references and things like that in place, now what I'm going to actually use here is Blender 3. If you've not tried it out yet, I highly recommend Blender 3 because it has a lot of things that are pretty much game changers, like the Asset Manager. The Asset Manager makes such a huge difference to bring in things like references or HDRIs or other parts, and you'll see me use that a lot actually within this build. So now let's have a look at how I actually came up with this model. So I deleted everything off the scene, then I went to the Asset Manager and I brought in a human reference, as you can see here, and now I've got him in. As I do with all my courses, I always bring in a reference because then it gives you a good idea of how you can actually build from that and how big everything's going to look. And then you're not going to have any problems in the later stages. You can see here I'm going to use proportional editing to actually create this roof, which will give it a nice smooth slope actually coming from the middle. And you can see there that I've built up, I think it's 4 levels on there, something like that. So now I've got a good idea of how big the towers want to be. And that then will actually relay to the rest of the build and tell me how big the actual build needs to be. All right, so I'm happy with the actual tower size. And what I'm going to do now on is the actual grey box of the actual main part of the church. And I know this is very important because it's the central theme of it. So you must get this right. And that includes the actual towers on here. I think what I'm doing here is I'm just making a simple door now, just to give me some kind of reference as to how big the actual main part of the building is going to be. And there we go, I'm just solidifying that just to actually give it some bulk now. And then I duplicate it and I solidify it again and split it off from the rest of the mesh. Because I am recording this in real time, by the way, I'm sorry about the traffic outside. I can't really do a lot about that on this one. And then I just fill it all in. Okay, so now what I'm doing is I'm just positioning the rest of my grey box out and just making sure that I'm actually happy with how this is going at the moment and just refining it here and there. And as you can see there, I'm trying to bevel it, but I couldn't bevel it, and the reason is because obviously I've got something on the inside of it which is making it impossible to bevel, and now you can see I can actually pull it out and then pull that part out much easier. Alright, then I mirror it over the other side, and I've pretty much got the main part of the build. And now I'm thinking, right, how can I do something interesting with these shapes without making myself a lot of work? And you can see now I just brought that in and then just use that again on this side. The thing is, it's easy to make the front of it interesting and forget about the sides and the rear of the building. So you've got to think all the way around, how can we make it interesting going all the way around? Now you can see I did actually spend a lot of time on the top of it because again, that is the central point. So it has to look, if anything's going to look like a Greek church, it's actually got to be the central point of it with the towers, so that's instantly recognizable. That's what you're looking for. While at the same time with buildings, actually making them stylized is not that easy because you can't get away with just making them as chunky as possible, like you could with a barrel, for instance, and things like that. So you have to do it in other ways to make it stylized, and a lot of it is down to colors and textures and things like that. But just make everything more chunky and don't add too much detail. You're going to need detail in there, but if you are going for stylization, you don't want to have loads and loads of detail actually in there. You want to keep it pretty simple and let the shapes and the silhouette actually do the work for you. Alright, now I'm smoothing everything off just to see what it looks like. That obviously gives me a good idea then, and now I'm bringing in the first light source because I actually want to get a good silhouette of it and actually see how it's all coming together. And I recommend doing this once you've actually built the grey box, because then you're going to have a really good idea. I'm actually now I'm taking out the HDRI because it's I can't really see what it looks like, and I've just brought in a gradient just to have a better idea then. Now this build took about 5 hours, so I have had to speed it up a fair amount just to get it around the hour mark, so just bear that in mind that we're moving at a pretty fast rate here. And what I'm trying to do is actually fill in this face at the moment. I'm having a little bit of trouble because I realise that if I fill it in that way, it's going to create a lot of n-gons and make the mesh actually pretty much a mesh. So you can see now I've filled it in a nice way, and now I know I can actually move on. Alright, so the next thing I think we're going to look at is, I think I'm going to bring in the pillars in a minute. Yep, there we go. So what I'm looking in now is just to bring in some Greek style pillows. Sorry, pillars, not pillows. And then I'm looking at, can I bring it in from there with 32? I think it's 32. I'm not sure if I brought that down or not. But it's very important, obviously, to count how many actual sides of your cylinder you actually use. Because if you have it at 31 or something like that, then you won't be able to actually make every other one an indentation in the pillow, so just bear that in mind. And now I'm just pointing there just to measure it out and see, right, are these pillars the right size or are they just way too big? Of course, Greek pillars, they are quite chunky things, and also we're making something that's pretty stylized, so it's better to have really chunky pillars rather than thin, strangly ones. Alright, so now what I'm working out is this pillar too far out? Can they walk past there? Should they be walking past there? And they're all things that are going through my mind when I'm actually building this. And I want it to look part of the building, not just like it's stuck on there in some way. So that's why I'm actually spending so much time actually working on this at the moment. Alright, so now we're moving actually onto the pillar part just to make it, and you can see there, tried to go around with two, didn't quite work. There you go, now I brought them in and I can see it actually works. Okay, now I'm just checking out to make sure it looks okay. And if you ever want to see what it really looks like, just add in the sharp and then you'll get a really good idea. And that's what I'm actually doing here. Sharps are pretty powerful to actually bring something to life. So there you can see that pillar's actually done now. Just moving the doors, and I'm going to try and see, right, do I need 3 pillars, 4 pillars? How many pillars do I actually need to make this look actually quite nice without going too over the top? You can see that I delete it out of the way. I'm not quite happy with it. Then I'm looking, does it look better beveled? Yep, it does. So let's bevel them all, and there we go. I think we actually move on to the next part now. All right, so we need to make the actual ornamental part of the actual each floor. So I know once we've actually done it on one, then we can actually bring it up to the rest of them. I want something simple again, but I still want it to, I don't just want them stacked on top of each other. I actually want, like, there's a lot of actual workmanship gone into actually building this church while still making it stylized. So if this wasn't stylized, I'd probably make those parts there much thinner and a lot more detail on them. So in the middle of those, I'd probably have a lot of ornamental actual sculpting actually going in there or something like that. So on one hand, it's easier making stylized things, but on the other hand, it's harder because you've got to think about every part, and you've got to think how it can look really good using simple shapes, as I've said. All right, so now we're looking at the actual windows. And it's a really good idea once you've actually got your windows to save them. So just grab them, duplicate, and put them to the other side, and then what you'll have them for the rest of the build. Always save everything. So I haven't saved the pillars there, but what I should really do is once I've built the pillars, move them over to the other side and just save them. So you can bring them in as well in other builds and things like that. So I am spending a lot of time making sure that I'm happy with how this is. You can see I'm referencing a lot. That's why I'm pausing sometimes, because I'm actually really looking at the references, just making sure that this central part looks the part, basically. I don't want the windows to, be like the medieval inn windows or anything like that. I really want them to fit the scene. Now, to level them all up, before you do anything, the best way is to use the bisect tool, as you can see there. And now that they're all leveled up, it's much easier to work with them. Now, you can see there that I can't actually put an edge loop in there because of the fact it's got a rounded top on. So what I do is, again, I use the bisect tool to actually just put a line straight through. And that's a little trick that you'll find makes it really easy to actually do things. Now you can see on these, which I will come back and fix, that the actual mesh is all over the place. It's got a lot of n-gons and things like that. But from what I've actually done, there you go, I've just, I'm going to use them as a bisect, see, so I don't actually have to do that. So there we go, they're bisected now, and they're the actual windows. So you can see now that those I moved to the side because I'm going to use them again, and here now I can actually work on those windows, and now you can see that we don't have any issues with the mesh or anything like that. So now I'm just making the actual frames of the windows. Again, I'm looking at my references just to make sure those frames actually look like that. And you can see there that I used the bevel tool, and you can see I used the custom design of it to get that actual flow of the underside of that roof. And now for these windows, I'm just going to put a little bit more detail in because they are the front windows. So they're just simple cubes, these, but they actually do make a striking difference when used like that. And let's put in a shelf underneath there just to actually finish it off. And you see there to reset my orientation, because when I tried to bevel that, it didn't quite bevel right. Alright, so I think I'm pretty much happy with that, and now I've got to do is actually think about, right, I need some crosses, because if you look on all Greek churches, they have some crosses actually in the actual windows. Now, I did make a bit of a hash of this. I could have made this cross much easier than I did, but I decided to just make it difficult for myself, and sometimes that happens. So you can see there, I've got the general shape, I just bring it out, done with it, and there we go. Simple as that. And I tend to do that a lot. I'll make the shape, and then I'll just Shift D and just bring out that 2D and then create it into 3D. It really does help the workflow. Now, the one problem I have here is I've got the right shape, but is it going to fit the window? And that's what was going through my mind. How do I make this fit the window? The other thing is, what I should have done here before actually doing something once I'm happy with the cross is duplicated it, moved it to the right hand side, and just had it there for the rest of the actual build. Now you can see again, I used the bisect tool and then I filled it all in with Alt F, and now I've got my cross design, and now I'm actually going to bevel it off because it's actually created properly. In other words, the mesh now, integrity is correct. Alright, now I duplicate it, and if I duplicate again, I see I've got a huge problem there. How am I going to fix that? Doesn't quite look right. So then what I decide to do, instead of doing it that way, I'm going to actually use the array modifier because it's going to make it really, really easy. And you'll see me do that in a minute. Now, is it going to look right like that? That's what I'm actually looking at. So now what I'm going to do is, just to make it a little bit easier, I'm just going to cheat and I'm going to make an actual another part to it, and then they're going to go in much easier. So sometimes it's good, and you can see there that I actually put it on to make sure they're all the same size on the solidify. So now you can see it's made it much easier for me. You can see I can't quite get away with 4, but I think on this I actually get away with 3. And instead of doing it this way, I'll just delete them and add a modifier. I'm sure I had a modifier here. Before I do that though, look, you can see that I'm actually doing all my seams and things like that, because if I'm going to duplicate this that many times, I really don't want to be going in there and marking seams on every one of these. So I just make sure all my seams and everything's correct. Here we go. It doesn't matter where it is on the UV map as long as it's unwrapped correctly. And now you can see I'm adding in my array modifier, and you can see that I do that because then as I move one of them, all of the rest move along with it. Now I'm really happy with that, so now we have to come on to the next one and think how we're going to get them in this one. And it is a lot of trial and error and just playing around with them. You can see I can get away with making them a little bit bigger on this, and you can see that they fit really nice now. Okay, so then we apply those. Now I'm just thinking, oh, this is where I think, let's have a look. Yeah, you can see there the actual normals were the wrong way around, so I just spun those around, and now what I'm working on is the actual front of it. Now the reason I'm actually taking my time on the front of it like that is to actually make these ornament parts. I want them to flow around the actual the edge loops, or the little spaces between the edge loops around this. And the way to do that is, you'll see in a minute as I do in Zbrush, so I'm bringing it in now. And you can see I press Shift F, and then you can see that I've got those actual faces pretty much spaced out really nicely, and that's actually really going to help. You can see that I bring it in, and there we are, it's in, and you can see I will have a problem with it. In that I need to add some edge loops to these actual parts, because you see they're not bending very well, so I did actually forget that, so I'll go back in, add more edge loops, and that actually makes it bend a lot easier for me. Then back to ZBrush, bring it back in, and now you'll see that they bend really nicely. And now it's just a question of getting them in place, and you can see I'm using the nano mesh here. So the Z modeler to actually bring out the cubes, change the cubes over for this actual OBJ, and then mess around with your nano mesh, and finally I'll go to geometry and actually convert them to actual mesh. And I use ZBrush because it just makes this process so easy, so quick. I mean, within 2 or 3 minutes you can actually have it done like I have now. Export them out, and here we go. Now bring them back in. You can see just how easy that is. Again, I'm sorry about the traffic, guys. Sometimes this will happen. I can't really do anything about that. So now you can see that I'm not happy with the second 2 N1, so I just delete those and bring that other one in because it looks a little bit more flat. And there you can go. See, easy as that. I think it took 10 minutes or something, and it looks really nice. So I recommend it doesn't matter what software you use, it's all about how you use the software and which pieces of software you find that make the best workflow for you. So you can actually do all of this in Blender. It's just that if you learn other softwares, it does make it easier. And of course you need access to them. Alright, so now we're actually looking at the actual roof. Now first of all, I was going to do it the same way as what you've just seen with the actual ornaments that I just made. But then I thought, yeah, these side ones are just going to make it more complicated. So you can see I'm going to go in there. Well, I'm first of all making my roof tile. I want to make something simple because I'm actually going to use the roof tiles as mesh. So I mean, in other words, if I take this out to Unreal or something, it's actually going to be mesh. I'm not actually going to go over and re-topologize the roof, which I should do. And normally I would do if I'm actually bringing it into a games engine, just to bring down the polygon count and textures and things like that. But being as this is for pretty much a portfolio piece, then I'm just going to go with mesh. Alright, so I've got my roof tile. You can see I've deleted those side parts off because I realize I'm not going to need them. And then we're back into Zbrush and we're going to do pretty much the same thing as what we did. And you'll see again how easy it is. Now I do realize straight away, what's the point in having two sides? We might as well not have two sides. We might as well instead just get rid of one side and then just work on one side. So that's what I do, just split them off, then delete them. And now again with the Z modeler, bring out the cubes, change the cubes over for the actual roof tile, and there you go. Now I do spend a little bit of time messing around with this because sometimes they just don't go the way that you want them. But you can see how easy and how much effect you can have. The good thing about this as well is, unlike on this actual one, I didn't actually have to randomize them. But you'll see if you go and look at the actual stylized in, I do randomize them, I do move them out, I do make some bigger, some smaller, things like that. And it's so easy to do that as well with nano mesh. So that's why I actually use it. You can see now I've got them in position. But you will notice with Greek roof tiles that they're pretty much straight. Alright, so now we bring in our roof tiles. Let's have a look what they're going to look like. And there we go. Now again, as I say, if I was doing this for a game for optimization purposes, I would actually come in and go over them with retopologizing. I wouldn't have all this mesh. Now you can see there, I did make use of the normal to spin them all around on their own axis. And now I'm just measuring them all up and making sure that they all go together. It's important as well when you're building things like this that you actually understand which way the roof tiles are actually going to go. Roof tiles on Greek churches, this is why it's good to look at the references. They don't generally go all the way up, they actually spin round like this. And you can see it looks a lot more effective when you've actually done it this way. But now the only problem is trying to mirror that and I couldn't get it right, so I had to, which way does it go? And that's what I'm actually doing there. So just looking now just to make sure. Do I need these to pull out a little bit more? And I spent a fair amount of time on the roof because I know that to make this actually look right, the roof is one of the main parts of it. So, you know, you can get away with the windows not looking quite right and things like that, but the roof, that's the first thing that hits you. So these want to be looking right. They want to be, main point is they want to be looking like the actual part of the building, not just stuck on like sometimes you will see a lot of roofs that look like that. And they also want to fit the theme. So, you know, the best way you can give something stylization is actually probably from the roof. These big chunky tiles, it really sets the scene straight off. Now I did have one problem in that, right, which way are the roof tiles going to go? How are they going to go? And you can see here, I'm just messing around, just thinking, okay, does that look good like that? And then once I'm happy with it, then I can just array it all over. And don't be afraid to actually mess around with the scaling. You're really not going to see the difference in scaling if you just mess around with it slightly like that. I used to be really scared of doing that, but now when I bring things into Unreal to create scenes and things, I scale things up and down all the time just to make them fit, and they actually go together really well if you do it properly. Now what I'm doing is I'm just getting rid of the excess because there's no point keeping the excess, even if you're you know, rendering something or something like that. You just don't want those extra polygons in there because they really start to add up if you just leave everything in there. You will notice a bit later on, I think I show it where actually I delete a lot of the bottoms or the insides of meshes where we're not going to see them. And again, I do that for that reason. Alright, so now we're just having a quick look round. Right, how are we going to finish this? Well, we need some roof tiles for the top. No point using any of the roof tiles I've already got because they're going to look a little bit different on the top and I need them to fit a bit better. So you can see there, just reduce the polygon count a little bit and just made a real quick piece of roof actually, which is easy when you've only got a few to actually put on there. Didn't even need to really think about them fitting properly because I knew I would be able to fit them in because, you know, there's like 5 tiles or something. And there you go again, you can see I'm actually deleting all of the ones I don't actually need, and you can see that's probably reduced it by 2/3 on the polygon count. Alright, I always tend to make the back of them smaller just so they fit in really nicely, and if you look at roof tiles like this, they're actually all like that, just so they fit in really nice together. And now you can see I made it a little bit uneven, just to make it a little bit more stylized. Final smoothing on those, just to fit them all in. And now we're going to come to the tower main actual openings at the top. You can see there, that's why I saved my window out, because I actually wanted to use it again, so that's why it's important. And now you can see I'm actually stretching it out because I'm actually going to use it as a boolean. Because the funny thing is, if you look at Greek towers, they're normally all the same, and they have this very elaborate design actually, and to get that right, it's actually quite a complex design. So you can see now I've got the first bit of it right. I'm just looking around just to making sure that's okay. And I'm going to delete one off, and I'm going to actually use that for the next part as well. So I'll bring it up, pull it out, spin it round, and then you can see, hey presto, I've got my actual design. And you can see just how complex that would actually be to actually build. But in 3D modeling, it's not actually that hard. Now you will have a lot of problems with the mesh integrity of these, so what I'm doing is I'm using the bisect tool again, just to make it easier to actually triangulate and things like that, so the mesh actually is done correctly. We don't want n-gons, things like that. Now you can see what I'm doing is I need those little kind of parts coming down. You can see I mess up here. I don't actually realize straight away. You can see, oh no, made too many in there. Okay, let's go back, make sure I give enough edge loops, and now we can come in and bring it down like so, and there you go, you've got your actual balcony there. And I'm just going to join them all together like so, and then extrude them down again. And you can see how quickly actually that actually came together. And there we go. It's all pre-planning, that's the main thing. You can see when I do extrude, sometimes it actually gets rid of the top, so I just fill those in. Well, the pre-planning, how to do something is much more important, I would say. You know, if you've got a lot of ideas of how to do things, the more varied it is, the more way techniques you have, the easier it is to build pretty much anything. So when you look at a build, you're always thinking of, right, how can I actually build that part of it? So now what I'm doing is I'm just making sure the roof is actually correct. I need to fit on there properly and look actually, again, like it's actually part of the build. Again with my bisect, one of my favorite tools. Okay, let's fill this in and make sure it sits on there really nicely. And there you go. Now we need to hide that there, so we sit it on there, and then I just need to hide it, so I'm just going to steal this, Shift D, and then just make it into another piece of alcoving or something like that, just to hide that a little bit, and it looks pretty cool, so that's why we did it. You can see there, I pulled it out at an angle, it didn't look right compared to the rest of the church. And that's what I'm trying to do as well when I'm doing anything like this. I'm trying to make sure that they all go together, so we don't want something too wacky out there in comparison to the others. If you do something really wacky, then you need to carry that on through. That's the point. So you can see I'm not actually doing anything too crazy. I'm trying to keep it just a really nice actual stylized model. So you can see I brought all of these out, spun them round, and what I used is the bottom, which is the little sideways V, and that then will move your cursor right to the center when you actually spin them around. So it's a really easy way of spinning things around based on a center point. If not, you will spin round based on where the object is. So you basically grab the center point, put your cursor there, press that little sideways V, and then you spin them around, and they'll spin around that actual center point. Alright, so now I've beveled them all off. I'm going to steal this to actually create the actual new window frame. There we go. And I'm going to bevel it off, just get it right, because I know this is going to be, what is it, 4, 8, 12, 26 times or something, so it needs to be looking right. You can see I'm not really happy with the bottom bit, just working on it a little bit. Plus I want to be relatively simple because we're also going to UV unwrap these. Alright, so let's see if the actual crosses fit in them or not, and at the moment it's not, so obviously we need 2 of them. You can see again I'm going to use the array because it's going to make it a lot easier. I already know they fit, as you see, sideways, so now I'm just fitting them downwards, and then you can see I forgot to mark my seams, and I definitely want to do that. You can see I've just gone back then, before I actually apply that array, mark all the seams out, then apply the array, and then they're all marked out. So you can see there, just making sure they're correct, and there we go. And now they're all marked. And then, because I know I'm gonna, if the windows are 36 times, my crosses are gonna be 6 times that, so that's over 100 times. So and also if you, obviously you don't want the crosses to be, you know, you don't want those to take up the whole UV map. So you want to be copying that actual UV unwrap to the rest of them to make it easy. So they need to be, if they're already unwrapped the same way, you can just place them then on the UV map in the same spot. It just makes things easier. So always mark your seams and UV unwrap if you've got something that's going to be repeated a lot of times. Just makes things a lot easier, and just get into the habit of doing that. Alright, so now I'm just making sure I'm happy with my window before I do anything, and then what I'm going to do is, again, I'm going to use the little trick that I told you about. I think I'm going to actually duplicate this and then put it around, there you go, around the sides, and you can see it's coming from that central point. And I'm just going to join them all together. You can see again I have another problem in that the windows, again, not been marked seams on there. Should have done that. So I'm just going to go back and actually do that. And the one thing, it's very hard to see on these actual windows if they've actually been unwrapped correctly. You can see there as well, I'm actually thinking, should I get rid of the back? And I do in the end, just to make it a little bit easier on the unwrap. Plus we're not going to need them, plus it's 36 windows. Now you can see on the UV map there, it's really hard to see. Right, that's very bent, but is it going to look okay? I mean, you got to imagine what material is going to go on. If it's wood or something, you can see here, bring in my actual UV check, and that then is going to show up anything that's a problem. And you can see that bow on the window, it is causing me some problems. So I'm just going to re-unwrap that and try and get it looking right. Now, if it's wood or something like that, you don't want a lot of stretching because on the wood grain, it's really going to show up so easily that you need to make sure everything's straight. If it's metal or something like that, you can get away with it a lot more. If it's paint, it's one of the easiest things to get away with because you really won't notice the stretching. So there's all that to take into account. And when you're actually building this, you should really already be planning what actual materials you're going to be putting on this. Alright, so there we go. That then will tell you how much time you need to spend on UV unwrapping. Some things, you know, don't need to be UV unwrapped absolutely perfectly, whereas other things really do. So you won't want any stretching on the pillars, for instance, because they're, you know, a central point. Now with some things, very simple things like the roof, you'll notice I didn't actually UV mark the seams and UV unwrap, because you can actually UV unwrap those marked seams and then copy it just to the rest of the actual tiles, and that's what I ended up doing in the end, because they're just a very simple design. You can see here I'm starting work on the bell now. I need to make this stylized, and to make it stylized, you can see I'm just making things pretty chunky is the way that I'm doing this. So we just looking now to make sure it's all right. Do I need another band in there or something? Let's go inwards on that one. Just a simple extrusion. And now let's bring in some bevels. Bevels really do help. Nothing in the world is actually, you know, perfectly straight. Not even a razor. But nothing on buildings or anything looks like a razor. They don't have razor sharp edges or anything like that. So just make sure you go and bevel most things off. And now I'm just building the structure up for where the bell's actually going to hang. And I'm just going to steal some parts from another build. Again, using the asset manager within Blender 3. I'm going to bring in the chains in a minute. So I'm just making sure I'm happy with this wooden strut. Don't need to spend a lot of time on it, just needs to make sure that it looks as though it's actually working. Again, with the metal there, I always bevel off the edges. You don't want any straight edges. There we go with the chain, bring the chain in. It's already got the material on, which is really, really handy because that's another thing with the Blender Asset Manager. When you bring things in, they come in with the actual materials. And you can see there, the actual assets that I've actually got. And I use a few of those in this build. And the next build I do, I'll have a bell, I'll have, you know, a Greek windows and things like that. And it just makes building new structures and new materials, simple basic materials, really, really easy. So you can build up massive libraries of materials. Here I'm actually starting on the actual stained glass window. I didn't want it to be too complex. We could have, you know, gone into Photoshop and really made something really complex and then turn it into an SVG or something. And I did actually have a look at that. I took it out of this because it was just too long-winded, but it just made things too complicated. And if it was something realistic, then it's absolutely worth doing. But for something like this stylized kind of thing, you want something kind of, you know, more cartoony. So I went with something just a simple Greek flag design. So now I'm just trying to work out, right, I need some parts that are going to go up to the actual main part of the window. So just bevel them off, extrude them out, pull them up, make them smaller, and that's it. Job's a good one. Very effective. Now I need to fill these in because I need a central point. I'm not sure if I use solidify on this, but I can't have it just a 2D plane. There you go. Shift N just to change the normals around, split them off, and there's the solidify. You can see there, Shift N, spin them around, and there we go. Simple as that. Now I'm just checking the mesh integrity. Just going to make them smaller so they fit a little bit better. And there we go, that's the main part of that actually done. Now of course we do have a problem in that the things were sticking out there, so what I did was I used a boolean, intersected it, and then just got rid of those ends. It was really easy to do that. And then just pulled them out a little bit more just so they're hidden behind there. And again, you can find all of these techniques and things in the course links down below, so just check them out and have a look and see if there's anything on there that you really like. And if you do sign up to my Patreon or even my Gumroad membership, then it's a very small amount just to get all those courses for free, along with the models, things like that, just every month. Alright, so now what I'm trying to do is the actual Greek flag. What I'm doing is I'm inserting, copying and pasting the actual distance so that they're all the same distance, as you can see. Obviously you're going to have a problem in that this isn't perfectly round or anything like that. So now we have to just play around with it and just make them fit into place. As you can see, that's what I'm doing. And then I mark all my seams, and that's very important because obviously this actual material is going to be made of lead, as it would be. So we do actually need it to be easy to actually pull those out and add material. So that's why I've marked the seams already. So I'm just getting rid of all of the excess that I don't actually need. And you can see I'm using the pulling them out all together. With the proportional editing, which is probably my other favorite tool along with the bisect tool. So I have a few favorite tools and I tend to use them all the time. Another one is the knife one, knife tool, and I think I use that here actually. So I also have a few, I just split that down the middle and I'm going to mirror it over the other side just to make things easier for me. And you can see at the moment I can't see where it looks like on the other side. So what I'll do is I think I go and I turn on one of the buttons. There you go. Now you can see what it looks like on the other side before actually applying that mirror. There we go. It looks really nice. I'm happy with that. And now obviously I need to bring all those out to make that actual lead. Yeah, I think the solidify is one of my favorite modifiers along with the bevel modifier. They're the ones I use most. A lot of tools you'll find, it's good to know that you actually are aware of them and know how to use them, but the chance of using them are very small for a lot of the modifiers. So The same with Zbrush as well, the brushes. There's thousands of brushes, but you'll only tend to use probably 5 or 6 of them when you're doing a build. They're very specialized, the brushes, so you'll often come across things like, I need some hair, then you'll need to actually look at the brushes that you need to use for that, or I need to do a certain thing, spin this round in some way, and again, they're very, like I say, specialized. Alright, so I think now I'm actually going to add in some materials, and the reason I'm doing it now is just to get an overall visualization of what this is actually looking like so far, and then what that'll do is it'll enable me to actually come around and start, you know, add in details and things like that where I need them, but also fixing the side and things like that, because as I say, you want it all to look interesting from any angle, really. Which is, it sounds easy, but it's actually quite hard to do. You don't want it to be just nothing on the back of it, for instance. So, and as you can see in the turntable, you can see that it just looks interesting going all the way around. There is one side which perhaps doesn't look as interesting as the other sides, but if you look at a Greek church, there is one side which is basically just some windows, and that's pretty much it. So here I'm trying to think of how many different colours we need. Now, basically on a Greek church, they don't use overly many colours or anything. They are quite simple. They'll have probably 3 different colours on the windows and things like that. So again, it's good to look at your references, and because it's a stylized project as well, you can actually get away with just a very simple palette of colours and things like that. Now, the other thing is I wanted this model to be good enough to be actually rendered out just with some simple Blender materials. And you always know if you've got a good model, if you can render it out with simple Blender materials and it looks good. That's the thing. Then you know when you take it through to Substance Painter and things like that, the model's going to look even better, because the base of the model looks really interesting and actually fits what you're trying to go with. So this is another reason why I'm adding these materials in, just to make sure that everything's really popping and things like that before I actually carry on. And although it does take a fair amount of time, probably 20 minutes or something just to get all these materials in, the other good thing is that now I've got all the materials, they're all laid out, which means I can easily add them into the rest of the build. I actually put the you know, this part blue, but actually when I came to finish this, I actually made the top of the roof, just the very top of it, very dark, because it fits so much better. It made it look as though the actual roofs were, you know, the roof tiles were actually attached to the roof and not just floating on top of them. So I learned something there. Alright, so that's pretty much that done. Now let's work on the tops. What colour we're going to have them. Of course, we need the towers to be blue. I'm going to just pull them up a little bit, just to make them fit a bit better. I actually think here's where I actually created the... Yeah, there we go. You can see here as well, I'm looking at what colours are really going to go well with this these parts of the towers. And there you go. You can see they go really well together. You can see I've got white paint on there as well, not just that grey is basically the concrete, and then you've got some white paint and some red paint and blue paint. That's pretty much it for the main part of the build. And then of course you've got your tiles, and you've got your metal for your crosses and things like that. Now here I'm actually doing the lead. I've just beveled those off because it's very important that, again, they don't look like razors or anything like that. Especially the lead, it's actually very soft. It's been hammered into place, so you'll always find it's pretty much rounded off. When you look at you know, windows and things like that, or roofs, it's just hammered into place, especially on old things. So now let's have a look. There's the stylized lead stylized grey, as you can see there. And now let's bring in the stained glass. You can see I'm adding a little bit of emission on there. So stained glass blue, and let's again adding an emission because I want these to be lit up. Even in, there you go, you can light it up, look. Even in the main build in Substance Painter, I actually did bring in some emission so that this in a night scene would really glow and give you those God rays and things like that. So I basically preempted it is what I'm saying. Alright, so there you go, you can see. Now we're just going to put on the Cycles X, because I know I'm going to actually want to see what this looks like. So I've just, it was my first time using Blender 3, so I just set it up basically to have the Cycles X. If you're having problems, by the way, with the Cycles X, even though you know your graphics card works, just make sure that you've got the latest drivers. That's one problem I actually had. So just download those and it should work absolutely fine. Alright, so now we're coming to the actual doors. And if you've been following me for a while, you'll see I have a certain way of doing doors and it just makes them really easy. You can see them using insert, extrude, insert, extrude. Very easy way to make doors, especially when you bevel them off. It's really effective. Alright, split it all off. Do I still need that? And there we go. And then we still need that actual part on the back, as you'll see in a minute, just to make the actual frame for the door. So you can see here now I'm just using that. Bring it out, delete it. Split them up, solidify. Okay, there's the actual wood or stone frame. You can see I'm using my bevel again, the custom. And now, I think I make this, did I get rid of it? Or, yeah, there we go. So now I'm making the actual stone that goes around the outside, split everything off with a Y, make them smaller, and then we come fill in all the holes, which I just did there. And then we'll come to add in a bevel, and there you go. That's as easy as that as to make a stone frame. Really easy. Join it all together. Now the one thing you will have is, you can see them using the bisect just to cut it all away, just to get rid of that back, because we're not going to need it. It's a lot of polygons. The one thing I should have perhaps done is just marked all my seams and things like that before mirroring it over. I think I actually went in at the end of this, marked all the seams on one and then mirrored it over. So it was a bit of a pain marking the seams on this, but it was fine in the end. So there we go, now we're adding in the colours. You can see that the doors look the appropriate size because we've still got our guy in there. You can see here again I'm making the cross, and I just make it much easier. Then I just pull it out and I think, yeah, that's going to be much easier to do it this way. So you can see I'm trying to make it now stylized. So let's bring it in. And there, yeah, that looks quite nice. So let's bring that in. And now obviously we need the ruby in the center. How are we going to do that? Again, inserting, extruding, very simple stuff. So let's bring in the metallic, bring that up, and let's do the ruby as well. You can see how quickly that came together. I mean, it literally took, 2 or 3 minutes or something. It wasn't a long process to make that. And it's actually really effective, so. Now I want it bang in the center, so just place my cursor there, and then put it in. And then although I'm happy with my cross, just be aware, don't make things too big, because you're really happy with the part you've made. You'll notice a lot of times when people render out movies of their artwork, they'll try and show everything, and the reason is because they are in love with what they've created. So just try and get away from that. When you're rendering something, just a simple turntable or something will suffice, or just a simple view of it. And then if people want to go and see more, then they will. So try and do it that way, rather than trying to show every little last detail. And I've been guilty of that myself, so I've seen it a lot. A lot of trailers for games and things, they also do the same thing. I always thought that the Warhammer 40,000 trailer, one of those was really like that. They just tried to show every little piece of artwork, and this trailer ended up, I don't think it ended up very good in the end because of that reason. So All right, you can see here what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to get, right, how many should I fit in there? How close should they be together? And you can see that I'm using an empty with an array just to bring them round. It's a very, very simple technique. And again, you'll find that out in my courses if you're interested in doing that. I think I also actually have a YouTube video in using the array, so you can check that out as well. All right, so whatever I do here, I know I can just bring them round of the circle on the main tower. So I'm just trying to get it right. You can see there, I do have some problems in there with the solidify. It's crossing over a little bit, so I know I need to go ahead and fix those. There you go, you can see there. I tried joining them together and I joined them at the last, and that's wrong, so I just joined them in the center. Just go around making sure, before I do anything else with it, that the mesh integrity is all correct. You can see I'm trying to bring it in now. I'm making it look right before I do anything else. Put it back on it because we're going to need that. And again, it's a good idea, I think. Let's see if yeah, you can see all the seams and that are already marked on there. So you can see I'm using this cross. All the seams are done, which is going to save you a lot of work in the end. So really, really important. All right, let's bring in some materials now. Get rid of the back, we're simply not going to need it. Make sure we're happy with it. Bring in the rest of the materials, just make sure it looks good. I think actually I changed that red out in the end. It's a bit too much, I think. Let's have a look. Not sure if I do in the end or not. Again, I'm just checking to make sure that it unwraps correctly, because I really don't want to put those all the way around if it's not going to unwrap correctly. And I'm just checking the windows now, how close they want to be before putting them all the way around. Now I'm using that empty, as you see again, and now put them in place, and there we go. And then what I'm going to do is now I'm going to do the same thing. I don't need Zbrush at this point to do this with the, because they're going around in a circle, and with the empty and the array, it just makes it really easy because we haven't got to actually bend anything because it's just a straight circle. Whereas if it was flowing in some way, you're better off, well, I use nano mesh, but you can do this with Blender, as I say. You can bend things with the array. It's just a little bit, I would say, more long-winded, and that's why I do it with Zbrush. All right, so I'm pretty happy with that. Now I'm going to give some more color to it. Again, sometimes the simple is better. You can see here that it's just a simple top. And now I'm just checking out what the light looks like. Again, you can see it looks really, really nice now. And now I'm just making sure, do we really need these windows here? I don't think so. So we'll just do some tidying up before moving on to the other parts. Not so bothered about the actual boolean being there, because that's going to be hidden. It's just a few polygons, but the windows there adds up to a few thousand if you leave them in, so you might as well get rid of them. Alright, so now I'm working on the actual stone. This part, these parts here probably would have had some stonework there, plus it actually makes it look a little bit more interesting rather than just an empty kind of corner. But as well as that, we could actually use this stone then on the outside of some of the parts, just to give more integrity to the building, to make it look a little bit more realistic, like it's been built by people and actually held up with, stones and things like that. So it's one of the main things that you should think about. You can see now that looks a lot better. Now the thing is, you don't really want to go overboard on this, so just a bit is fine and will really bring out your model, but you don't want those all the way around. Alright, so I think, I finally come to this roof. I'd put it off actually. So now you can see I'm just trying to get it all the right size, just not to waste any. And again, now we're going to do our roof tile and a little trick in, I think we use Zbrush again. Yeah, we do. There we go. And this is the final roof. So you can see in Zbrush actually, it probably took all told, I don't know, 20 minutes, something like that. It wasn't a long process or anything. You can see it's actually a very simple technique to do. And actually, these went a little bit easier than the main ones, so that was good. Right, I've got my material, so I might as well add them in. And let's pull these into place. And again, you can see with these tiles, they look a little bit more squished than the other ones, but they're still, you can still get away with them. Okay, I'm going to spin that round, then do the front of it, and then I'm going to mirror it onto the other side. And again, the way I'm doing the front is I'm just going to find the center point of this actual circle. I think I messed up this a bit in the beginning. So there's supposed to be my center point. Press that little V and you can see, look, it's not quite going there because that isn't the center point. So we have another go. Let's see if we can find the center point from here. And you can see again, it's not right. And eventually I just grab the two and there we go. Now I've got the center point and now I can move these and just duplicate them, grab all three, duplicate them again, makes it very easy. Now I know I'm going to use a center one, so I might as well just put them down to the edge. That makes it easy. Grab these, let's spin them around and let's put them on top of there and see what that looks like. And there you go, you can see the further on you go in the actual model, the easier it's going to be. And now you can see I'm just moving them up, tidying them up, and there we go. It gets harder in a way that you need to think of new ideas to make it interesting, but easier in the way that you've got a lot of pots that you've already done. So they're already pre-built so you can use them, or you've already actually mastered a technique and that actually makes it easier to actually create something else. And pretty much the best course, if you're going to look at the courses, is the castle course that I've created. That pretty much gives you so many techniques because you know, that is a build where we make a lot of different things and then we put them all together to actually create vast castles and things like that. So you might want to check that out if you're interested in these techniques. It's basically a modular system, and you could actually build this Greek church as a modular system. So you could take the towers and you could take the base and all that sort of stuff and just create a gigantic Greek church with all these pots and things like that. Another great reason why the asset manager in the new Blender 3 is really handy, because if you want to create whole towns, then you've already got the materials and things like that. If you bring in some you know, some actual real world textures, if you want to do that, you can create materials within Blender and then use them in all of the assets. So you can have 6 or 7 different types of metals and things and just drag them in and drop them on. Same as the HDRI, you know, the real world environments and things, you can make a load of those and then just drag them in, drop them on. You might want a night scene, a day scene, just really easy to use. It takes a little bit of setting up. There's plenty of videos out there now. It's so simple. Just set you know, a blend file up with what you're going to use, and then throw all your blend files that you want to use. You just have to right click them, mark them as assets, and that's it, you're ready to go. Alright, here I want to make this a little bit different. Probably going a little bit more on the pagan route here, to be honest, not so much on the Greek route, but hey-ho, I was happy with how this was going to be. It really fit it for me. You know, this kind of crescent moon type thing. And it's good though if you actually understand those things. If only to justify why you did it. You can see here making use of the knife tool, one of my favourite tools. It's really, really easy to use. And there we go. Let's bring in some sun rays. And there we go. Now I know that here I might as well just delete it, mirror it over the other side. Once I got the lead in, very important, so let's bring it in. You can see there I'm having a few issues with the crossovers and stuff like that. I've got to fix those. So I just bring them all together. I can see my other corners a little bit messed up, so you can see there. I really need to fix these before doing anything. So I'm just working on making sure they're correct, as you can see. Because the last thing you want to be doing is using mesh, and it's broken from the offset. So you want to make sure it's actually working mesh before actually using it in any way. So that's what I did. Before extruding it or solidifying or anything like that, just make sure it's usable. All right, let's bring in our lead. Simple bevel on that. You can bevel actual edges. Makes it really, really easy. You can see there, I think I do have a little bit of a problem in... Oh no, I don't. I'm just going to bevel them all off now. So you can see there the middle bits. So I'm using C there just to take them off. Bevel them all off. And there we go. Let's put them in place. And it's simple as that. Now I do have some colours, but for the windows I'm already done, but the main thing is they're already set up, so I'm just going to copy, as you can see there, just copy it onto that one, and there you go, you've got your emission already set up with what I had it on before, and that's just a simple case of changing the colours. So you can see I'm just getting them all prepared. How many colours do I want? I think I want 3 or 4 on this or something, and now I'm just changing the colours over, and there you go, I'm just going to apply them in. So sun, of course, yellow, and then just apply those in. Red, I think, is a little bit too bright there, and I think I just come and calm it down a little bit, as you can see. Really easy once you've got them in place. And again, this is just giving me a representation for what I'm actually going to do in Substance Painter. There we go, mirror them over the other side. And here I'm going to use the clipping part of the mirror, because I don't want that line going down there. So you can see I'm just going to clip it in, and then once it's in I can actually delete that center like so, and there we go. Now the bit in the middle doesn't quite look right, so let's bring that down, make it a little bit more rounded, and there we go. Simple as that. Alright, so now perhaps the most boring part, you know, it's the back part of it. It's, what do we do with this part? Sometimes you get into that, and it's always best if you are in that kind of mood, just take a break, come back. I probably did that, and then you'll be happy to carry on then, because sometimes it gets a little bit too much when you're creating, you know, you got to create a back, and you've already created that beautiful front and things like that. So that's what I tend to do. Now you can see that because I've took a break, I've come back and it's looking pretty varied, and it's going to fit the scene pretty well, but it doesn't need to be as kind of sorry about the bike, kind of major as the front or anything, as long as it looks interesting going all the way around. Of course, on any building, the front of it is always going to look the most impressive, whichever real world building you're going to look at. You can see here I forgot the window there, so I just replaced that. Alright, so now I'm going to make another door. Again, I took a break. If I didn't take a break, I probably would have just stole the doors from the front or something and just made them like that. And because I took a break, I'm like, right, I need to make a different style of door. So you can see here, I'm just doing the windows first. So let's make these windows, get them to where I want them. And then I'm also doing, so the side windows and this side windows. Okay, and we just Boolean. And now I know that I only need to really create one of the frames again, as we've done all the way through, and then put that on the others. So now let's have a look at this door. So it's going to be a square door on here, just to make it look a little bit different. You can see that I try and insert it, and you can see it didn't insert properly. So then I try and bevel them. That made it a little bit easier. And now when I insert, I can insert them individually. Now you can insert individually as well, just so you know. It's just one of the options on the left hand side. Alright, let's bring these in. And the stylization, we have two of them in the courses that you can check. One of them is the pumpkin sauce course, which is one of the best sellers, and the other one is the stylized island course. And these basically go through using modeling and using materials within Blender itself. We don't actually go through to Substance Painter or Zbrush or anything like that. Everything is completely done in Blender. If you want a course where, you know, we use all of the software available, then the Canon course, go and check that out. We use Marmoset, we use Zbrush, we use Substance Painter, and we use everything that we can to really make something that's a really, really special model, as you'll see if you go and check out the Canon. You can see here the techniques I used for the rocks are pretty much the same I do in all of my courses and all of my YouTube videos. Really, really easy technique to use. Okay, now we're just working on the few final bits actually, because I know this is nearly coming to an end now, and just tidying up them. And I think apart from the last windows, we just have the door knockers, because the thing is, it's a pointless exercise putting really small details in like hinges on something like this. If this was used realistically in a game, it's going to be used in an RTS game or something like that. It's going to look really pretty, but the small details are really going to be wasted. So the only reason you'd want to use like hinges and things like that is if it's going to go in a game where you've got walking right up to the door and you might be going in the door, for instance. Then yes, okay, you're going to need hinges on there, which are really easy to do. But if you're not using it like that and it's a portfolio piece, the portfolio, you're going to actually take it from a real setback. So you're actually going to look at the whole building, and those hinges and things, you're not really going to see them. So, but you are going to see the door knockers, or the handles if you want to call them that. So it's important that you create those. I actually cheated because I'd already created these for another actual World of Warcraft in design. Check that out, it's on my YouTube or on my ArtStation. And you can see that the same door handles used in that as well. So took a bit of a lazy approach there, but again, with the new Blender 3, really great because you can really build up those assets. So in time, I'll make more and more door handles and things, and then I'll have, you know, I've made so many door handles through how many models I've created. I would have literally probably over 100 door handles to pick from. So I'll perhaps have to go in, find all the door handles and all the blend files, and then just bring them all into one. Although there is a problem in that, obviously, every time you build something you get better and better, so I'd probably find the first door handles with many issues with the mesh and things like that, so maybe not. Maybe I'll just have to go in one day and just create a load of door handles like I've done with all my doors. Alright, so you can see here, I bring in that door. I've got hinges on there, but again, I don't really need those, not in this build. So I just steal the door handle, as you can see. It already comes in with material. Put it into place. Does it fit? Does it look good? Yep, it does. Okay, let's go with that. And that's pretty much what I did there. You can see there as well, I've got lights, I've got signs, I've got, you know, plenty of stuff there to use. So the next course I'm going to do actually is going to be using Blender 3, using this asset library and things like that, because I think it's just so handy. And yeah, I really need to do a course based on that so we can together really start creating scenes really easily. Alright, so I'm really just doing, I think, the final parts now. So I've got all the handles in. Yeah, the windows are all in. And I think I'm pretty much happy with how this looks. So what I'm doing now is I'm taking a final look. I'm seeing if I've missed anything. Like you can see these actual frames. I've actually missed them, so I'll make them into stone. And then I'm just going to look around, having the final look, making sure I'm happy with everything. I do a little test to see if this looks right on top of there, and then I think, no, perhaps a little bit too much, but something does need to be done with that dome because it's looking a little bit too basic and we need to bring it up a little bit like so. So I just have a look at what I can do with it. In the end, I actually put in a gold relief on there and it really looked good. So now I'm just going to check it out. And there you go. And then I'm like, yep, that's it. That looks actually good. And then a white one on the bottom. Does that look good? And yeah, delete all the stuff out. And let's give it one quick render with Eevee. And there we go. Alright everyone, so that is how I actually built the actual stylized Greek church. I hope you learned a lot from it. It was quite a long one, but I hope it was worth it. And again, if you like what you saw, give me a like, subscribe, and check out the links down below, which will show you, I think there's 15 courses by now, something like that down there, and perhaps probably 20 different models or something that you can also get pretty much for free. So check out the links down below. And as always, happy modeling everyone, and I'll see you on the next one. Thanks a lot. Bye bye.